Good morning and welcome to Budget Committee. It's Wednesday, November 22nd, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. First, I'd like to ask if there are any declarations of interest. Seeing none, I will move on to our land acknowledgement statement. The town of East Gwillimbury recognizes and acknowledges the lands originally used and occupied by the First Peoples of the Williams Treaties First Nations and other Indigenous peoples. And on behalf of Council, I thank them for sharing this land. We also acknowledge the Chippewas of Georgian Island First Nation as EG's closest First Nation community and recognize the unique relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and waters of this territory. They are the water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and we join them in these responsibilities. So up first, we have some presentations, and we have, I think, joining us virtually is the community group Roots, Connecting Communities. Madam Clerk, can you let me know if they're with us?
Mr. Chair, I believe we have them on our Teams call. Niv, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, very clear. We have your presentation on the screen right now.
Please go ahead, Niv.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Niv Balla, and I'm the Executive Director at Roots Connecting Communities. I apologize that I can't be there in person or even show you my face because I am on commute. You'll just have to imagine that I look amazing today. Firstly, next slide. I firstly want to extend my gratitude for the 2023 funds. From January to September, we provided 1,638 trips to 87 East Gwillimbury residents facing complex barriers to transportation. And this often includes living alone, living in poverty, mental health issues, etc. Next slide. As many of you know, Roots started in 1989 as a grassroots organization providing safe, affordable, compassionate, and timely transportation. And we have since grown to providing life-saving transportation services, but also food deliveries from food banks, connections to services, social programs, supporting healthy aging, community engagement, and social connections. And this year, we introduced a new accessible vehicle. So we are now able to provide transportation services to residents with accessibility needs. We also printed brain games booklets and disseminated these to residents in the community for free. So you can see a picture of the brain games booklets. And next slide. And so I often think that the impact of our services is not only on our clients, but also on our volunteers. And so one of our volunteers actually said that being involved with Roots helped them to increase their gratitude, their sense of empathy, and also helped them to relate to others in their community so they felt more grounded and connected to their local community. From a client's perspective, we were supporting one resident who had recently lost their job, and so they needed some temporary financial alleviation. And we were able to provide them with food deliveries to support the family while they were going through a tough time. With our transportation services, we've heard and people have said to us that we go the extra mile. Our volunteers are definitely more than just a ride. We are social transportation where we provide peer support along the way. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we've provided 1,638 trips over the last 9 months. And we now have 11 volunteers in East Gwillimbury, which is up from last year, which is great. Next slide. So we continue to feel the pressures of inflation. The biggest one is, of course, gas prices. So we are requesting to support with fee subsidy assistance, and our fee subsidy assistance program drastically reduces the cost of our transportation services for individuals who are living severely below a low income cutoff, and this is determined by an eligibility criteria. And we also are asking for funds to support our outreach and community engagement. We've attended many of the farmers markets over the past year for outreach, as well as volunteer recruitment recognition. And of course, we are now getting into another year where we would need for PPE to support and keep our clients and our volunteers safe while they are taking our transportation services. So thank you very much, and that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much. Can I have a mover to accept receipt of this presentation? Moved by Councillor Leahy. Are there any questions from Council? Councillor Leahy.
Thank you very much, through you, Acting Mayor Crone, to Niv. We appreciate that you have taken the time to make this presentation. And I want to say, personally, when I visited the Health and Wellness Seniors event that was held at the EG Sports Complex recently, and you made a presentation there, one of your team members, I was really impressed to discover that you make food deliveries to residents, and it's incredible the number of trips that you've provided specifically to EG residents. I'm wondering if you could elaborate a bit more on the program that you offer about food delivery and whether or not you're connected with specific food banks in East Gwillimbury.
Yes, so we do have the partnerships with the food banks. And so really it's the food banks that assess whether a person, we understand that for the most part, food banks would like people to come and shop in person. But for individuals who are unable to come in person, the food banks determine that. And so then they can book a ride with us. And then we make sure that the residents receive their packages, I guess. And it's also determined by the family size and the number of people in the family, and they are allowed to, indicate if they have any special dietary restrictions.
And one quick follow-up comment. I wanted to emphasize the need that you are filling because of our lack of transit within East Gwillimbury and residents who live in areas like Mount Albert. If you don't have a vehicle and there is a shortage of dial-a-ride opportunities as well as a lack of public transit, that you are filling a much-needed service for the community. So we thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, I will ask, we have this moved by Councillor Leahy. Can I have a vote to receive? All in favor? None opposed, motion is passed. Thank you very much, Niv. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're moving on to, we have deputations. We have none at this time, so we'll move to item E, which is the proposed business plan and budget. And Mr. Velchich, I'll hand it over to you to kick this off this morning. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And just a little bit of a recap on a few things and a few opening comments before I turn it over to our treasurer, Mr. Marshall, and his team to take us through today's agenda and today's deliberations. So you've had a couple of very full days of budget deliberation so far. I think they've been very productive. My understanding, Mr. Marshall will clarify this through his presentation, is that as a result of the deliberation so far, there's been an ability to trim the proposed operating budget and proposed tax levy increase. We've also seen reductions in the capital program in excess of $1 million of projects that have either been reprofiled, deferred, or canceled. So that has also resulted in reduction of budget requirements for 2024. Just a reminder too, we talk about how we define and how we assess value for residents in terms of tax burden and relative tax burden. Just a reminder that Mr. Marshall's information through the BMA study indicates that the East Gwillimbury property taxes are approximately $600 less than all other municipalities in York Region for comparable accommodations, and over $1,000 less than the York Region average. So when we look at sort of driving and continuous improvement and driving efficiencies and creativity and innovation in our program and service delivery to ensure value for money for residents, we very much look at that relative tax burden to ensure that it validates that, in fact, we're making sure that our residents are well served and getting the value for the tax dollar that they deserve. So it also brings me to when we talk about relative percentage changes, just a reminder that those percentage changes, when you compare them, are very meaningful if you're at the same starting point. But if you're at very different starting points, they become much less relevant. So my point is, if one is at $2 and one is at $1, and the one at $1 increases their cost by 20%, they're still 80 cents lower than the next lowest. And so what we like to look at is what is the actual dollars coming out of people's pockets, as opposed to relative percentages from differing starting points when we assess value. I also just want to comment that coming out of the period of growth that we've had, being assessed as Canada's fastest growing municipality in Canada, that's the time when there is much needed investments in program and service areas. And so you see that in the 24 budget, and I would suggest that we're going to continue to see that for a couple of years, and that's going to be important for us to ensure that we're maintaining the program and service levels that our residents expect and deserve. It also, the 2024 is a really interesting budget because it's the last budget year before we open the largest capital build in town history, the Health and Active Living Plaza. And again, just as a reminder, the planning for this, and in particular the financial planning for this, actually started many years ago. In fact, the operating budget, there's been provisions being carved out since 2016 to ensure that that we can open this wonderful new facility in 2025 without a significant change in budget for 25 relative to the operating costs. And so although there's a number of staff that are proposed in the 24 budget in order to open the help, the provision of funding for that and the taxes for that have already been put away over several years, so there's no significant impact in 2024. And I think that was really prudent planning on the part of council and the administration to make sure that that was smoothed out in advance. I also just want to remind everyone that our finance department does, in fact, arrange for payment plans in specific circumstances where individuals find themselves in difficulty at any time and are having difficulty with cash flow. And so they work with a number of individuals from time to time. And I also want to remind us that there is a property tax deferral program for those that qualify if in fact they're in a situation where the increase is not bearable in their particular circumstances. And so there is in fact a deferral program that the town offers for those that qualify and that are in need of that. And the last thing I want to say is when this budget process is finished, the drive for efficiency and looking for savings, in fact, doesn't end. We have a continuous improvement program. We refer to it as our Municipal Peak Performance Program. And we are probably, to the best of my knowledge, the only of a few in the entire province that set an in-year savings target. And we haven't talked about that much during this budget process, but when you finish your deliberations and we land, our work hasn't finished. We still have to find close to $300,000 in savings through 2024 that's built in as an in-year savings target. And so, just because the budget process is finished, our process of looking for savings and efficiency continues throughout the year. So with those as sort of some opening comments, I will turn it over to our treasurer, Mr. Marshall, and he'll talk to us about today, and I think he's got a brief presentation as well.
So, good morning, Mr. Chair and members of committee. I do have a brief presentation to start off the morning. If we can go to the next slide, please. So we heard the opening comments from our CAO. What I would like to do with the brief presentation is just give us an idea of where we're at after the first 2 days of discussions, and give it kind of a highlight of what we need to do to complete our budget review process and our next steps. So, next slide, please. So when we started our deliberations last week, the proposed 2024 overall budget was $73.2 million. Changes identified during the 2 days of discussions have reduced the overall budget down to $72.1 million right now. And I'd just like to clarify that that doesn't include the proposed water budget that you'll be seeing next week. So the numbers that we have here are the approved 2023 budget numbers and not the proposed 2024 budget numbers. So that'll be coming next week. Next slide, please. So at the start of discussions, we had identified a tax levy impact on our tax-supported operating program of $2.2 million. During discussions, there was $40,000 of consulting costs that were in the operating program that were identified for HR policy and succession planning work that were subsequently moved to a one-time capital project, so moved out of the operating program. As well, late last week, we received the final supplementary tax run for the year from MPAC, and that resulted in an increase in assessment of $63,000. So that's in addition to what we had identified earlier as assessment growth. So that helps us in our operating program. As well, during discussions, there were some changes identified to the community initiatives budget, which included $3,000 for funding for the Sharon Burial Ground and an increase of $2,500 in funding for Roots Connecting Communities. As well, during those budget discussions, Budget Committee directed staff to come back with a funding alternative pertaining to staffing, the new staffing requests. And what we have proposed here is the EDI engagement position that we had in as a 0.5 FTE. We're proposing now that that be a one-year pilot project that gets funded from the working capital reserve with a report back on the success of the pilot during the 2025 budget process. So that would be removed from the tax levy supported funding. So if those changes are all adopted, the end result would be a reduction in the tax-supported operating program of about $160,000, which brings the tax-supported pressure to $2 million, which is the equivalent of $144 to the average homeowner. Next slide, please. So with respect to capital, on day one, there were some changes that were identified in the corporate services capital program. And those were summarized and identified through addendum number 3 that we had handed out last week. On day 2, some additional changes were identified, in particular with fire and emergency services. The equipment upgrade was initially $800,000, and that was reduced to $250,000. As well, the public education vehicle was deferred from 2024 to 2025. In Parks, Recreation, and Culture Capital, staff were asked to review 4 specific projects in the attempt to see if they could be deferred. And staff have come back and identified that, that the 2 rehabilitation projects should proceed, but the beach volleyball courts and pickleball courts could be deferred to 2025, with work still continuing in-house with staff in 2024, but the costs incurred in 2025. And if there's any questions on that, we're happy to answer those as well. So, next slide, please. So, okay. It's not up on, okay. So maybe I can,
Just a second while we sort
Okay.
this out.
yeah. There we go. Great. So this is a summary of the changes that were made to the capital, or that are proposed to be made to the capital program for 2024, with a total of approximately $1.1 million reduction in the program. Next slide, please. So there's still a few items left for a budget committee to deal with as part of the 2024 budget. They include addressing the 4 projects that I've just previously spoken about on the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Capital Program. There was a request from the Mount Albert Sports Day for funding and the amount of $14,000. The budget committee needs to address, and staff were asked to identify funding sources once that funding was sorted out, and we have some options as well once that gets debated. The new staffing requests still need to be looked at and reviewed a bit further. Multi-year plans, so the 1% dedicated tax increase that we had proposed for the Health and Active Living Plaza for operating that facility once it's open, and a 1% dedicated tax levy increase for asset management are also need to be addressed through budget committee, and the proposed cost of living increase that we have included in the budget as well needs to be addressed by the committee. Next slide, please. So this is just a summary of where we're at in terms of timelines. We're on day 3 right now. I'd like to make a correction. I think our last presentation, I had mentioned that we were bringing the water and wastewater budget on December 7th. I don't think anyone will be here because that's not a council date. So it's actually the 5th. So that we'll be bringing it forward. And then as well, we're proposing as staff to bring forward the approval of the, or potential approval of the budget on the 19th. And of course, this is all subject to change if committee and council would like it to happen. So I think that's it for my presentation, and happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Valchich, you had a comment you'd like to add?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm wondering, Mr. Marshall, could you just go back to the slide for a moment that showed your starting at the $155 and going to the $144?
Yeah.
The 144. So can you just confirm for us, the 144, does that include all the items that are being deliberated today? In other words, if council approves all the items that are on that list for review today, you end up at 144, is that correct? Or is the items on the list in addition to the 144?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, everything is included right now. So if we passed everything right now, that would be the 144.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. That's helpful. Are there any questions from committee? Councillor Carruthers?
I'll kick it off. I'm sure everyone has questions and comments. First of all, I just wanted to thank you. Council asked staff to go back and sharpen their pencils, and you have. I've seen you bringing forward a lot of things that we can defer, things that we can cut. I know council has asked to add a lot of things to this budget, so we've made room for that. And at $144, that's $12 a month, the average taxpayer. I think it's very reasonable because our job is to deliver the things that our community needs. And I would hate to see us cutting services at a time when people need these services. So I'm very supportive of this new rate that's much lower than what we were originally looking at. And I'm happy for the comment from Mr. Velchuk, because that was going to be my first question, is does that include everything that we're still pending? That's my comments. Thank you very much. You've listened to us. It's been a long few days, and this reflects what Council had asked for. Thank you.
Thank Councillor Johnson, Councillor Leahy.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just a comment. As we're going through these deliberations over these past few sessions, and like perspectives are important, and I think that the chair that I'm sitting in, different hats on. I also run an international water charity, and what we do is we fundraise here in Canada, and then what we do is we bring clean water projects to those that don't have anything. And it's interesting, as we were going through and we're saying, okay, we need to cut this, we need to cut that, and then to see in the presentation today that we couldn't defer the tennis court resurfacing as it's negatively affecting the playing conditions, it makes me sit back a bit, and I think to myself, I think lots of things. Sorry, I was dealing with some stuff this morning with the charity too, so when I was reading that, it kind of threw me off. But the reality is that we live in such a wonderful place. EG is such a wonderful place in this province and in this country, and we are very fortunate. And I think that this budget really does represent who we are as a community. And so, if we are committed to resurfacing our tennis courts, and that is a must, and that's what we are delivering because we live in one of the best places in the world, then I think that we should be proud of that and proud of who we are. But I just want to put in perspective whether we're fighting for $156 a month or trying to get it down to $128 a month. That's what we're talking about, and that's what we're talking about from a service delivery perspective. And I think we have a lot to be proud of in this town, and we should be privileged to be having this debate to figure out where we need to land. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. I think the phrase you were looking for is first world problems. Councillor Leahy.
Thank you very much. Through you, Acting Mayor Crone. My question for Mr. Marshall is around the contingency fund. How much is currently in the contingency fund, and how does that compare to the best practices of other municipalities?
So through you, Mr. Chair. Right now, there's a proposal to, in 2023, the contingency fund was $55,000. There's a proposal in 2024's budget to increase that to $100,000. And best practice, usually there's different ways you can look at it, but usually it's a percentage of your operating program that you would look at. So anywhere from 2 to 5% of your operating program would be a good number to have in your contingency, and that number that we're proposing is below that.
So follow-up question, Acting Mayor Crone, if I may. With regard to being unable to predict what 2024 holds, and with the unique situation that we're in, having recently received a consultant's report on the fire department that addresses 24 opportunities that we look forward to in the future. I'm considering that we might need to increase the contingency funds while acknowledging that many of the improvements that may be made from the fire department report won't cost any money, but there may be improvements that we want to see in 2024 that would cost some money. So I'm wondering if it would be appropriate to increase the percentage of the contingency fund according to the operating program, which you said that is lower than other municipalities.
Mr. Marshall.
So through you, Mr. Chair. The The contingency fund that we hold in the operating program is for kind of day-to-day on things that we don't know that are going to happen. If there's something that's larger in scale, we have a tax stabilization, which we call the working capital fund, that we could use to fund anything that is bigger than like our normal day-to-day things that would happen, and that would come through council as well. So, although the contingency I mentioned is lower than what normally would happen, we do have funding available if necessary to fund those one-time things that come up that we're not anticipating.
Thank you very much. That's reassuring to know, Mr. Marshall. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions? Councillor Roy DiClemente.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I see that we addressed the EDI engagement coordinator. I'm just wondering what staff, how the arm wrestling match went with respect to the council and committee support position. Because one of the things that I had identified as both of those positions as being ones that might have some potential to be deferred, especially given that we were in the midst of reviewing our committee structures and so on. So I'm just wondering where that landed.
Go ahead, Mr. Velchich.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, and good question. We did talk about that one. From our perspective, and really it's up to Budget Committee where you'd like to land on that one, but from our perspective, given just current workload and effort on the part of the EA to the Mayor and Council, so some support and some business continuity support for that role, as well as what we see as ongoing work that we anticipate will continue with committees. We are aware there may be some changes to the committees and to the way they're structured or what their areas of focus will be, but from our perspective at this point, we're not expecting that to be so material that it would negate the requirement for that half FTE. At least that's our opinion at this point in time.
I guess my opinion would be that I would differ from that. So I see that as one as being one eligible for reconsideration and would give us a little bit more room in the operating budget. Thank you.
Sorry, which one would be eligible for reconsideration? Which are both?
The council and committee support position. So new staff 011. It's a full-time pilot project. I think that's what that says.
Councillor Crothers?
Thank you. I think that's a 0.5 for council and committee support. I'm seeing it as a 0.5 FTE. When I look at that one, I circled it and put growth related. We expanded council with 50% more councillors. We added 4 new committees. We know that when the Mayor and Council EA needs support, it's drawn from other departments who are more strapped for time than ever. So I'm seeing this as not just being council and committee support, but it also helps backfill when we have to pull from other departments. I know as a councillor, I lean on communications a lot for help with committee work. So that would take that away and free up time in communication. So as a 0.5, I think it's very small. I would argue the opposite, Councillor Roy DiClemente, that we need a full-time person in there for the amount of work that needs to get done. But I'm happy to settle on a 0.5 as a pilot and see how we go from there. But to me, it's growth related. More councillors, more committees. We need to stop pulling from other departments and make sure that we have our own department staffed to meet our needs. Thanks.
Councillor Leahy?
Thank you. Through you, Acting Mayor Crone. It's just a point of clarification in terms of how we're going to be discussing these items. Mr. Marshall presented a slide which had a list of the items that still need to be addressed. So are we going to ask further questions of Mr. Marshall now, or are we going to go item by item on that agenda, so to speak, in terms of how we're going to discuss these items?
We can proceed however we would like to as a committee. So.
Personally, I would appreciate if we did it according to the itemized list that Mr. Marshall presented to us for the sake of
committee good with
clarity
that?
and efficiency. Yes.
Okay, thank you for the suggestion. let's proceed that way then. Mr. Marshall, can we bring that slide up? Okay. Thank you. Okay, so who wants to start the bidding? So we have PRC remaining capital projects. Mr. Marshall, could you speak to that briefly?
Sure, through you, Mr. Chair. So this refers to the 4 projects that committee asked us to go back and take a look at to see whether we could defer them. And staff have come back and proposed that 2 be deferred and 2 be carried on. And we just need the committee to adopt that in principle if they choose to do so.
Councillor Crothers, you'd like to speak
I
to
can
that?
put a resolution on the floor to adopt in principle that Sharon Hills maybe we should just talk about the 2 that should be deferred. The beach volleyball and the Sharon Hills pickleball courts be deferred to 2025.
Do we have a seconder for that? No. Oh, right, you're right. You're right. Go ahead. Madam Clerk, just
Through you,
give her a
Mr.
second.
Chair, we have prepared some draft resolutions with finance team, so I'm just going to put that up on the screen. I believe this was moved by Councillor Carruthers, but, and you don't need a mover in committee in the budget committee meeting. I mean, a seconder, sorry.
Okay.
So,
Okay, everyone have a chance to read that? I think it's, Councillor Leahy, you have a question with regards to that?
Yes, I just wanted to comment that in the other documents that we've looked at, what has been specified is that the planning would take place in 2024, but it would be deferred until 2025 for construction. And I think that that language needs to be specified on this resolution.
Okay, good catch. Okay, any other comments? Questions? Thank you, Madam Clerk, for capturing that. All those in favor? None opposed? Motion is carried. All right, one down. Okay, Mr. Marsh, oh, go ahead, Councillor Roy D. Clemente.
I think we missed the rest of the capital. Am I correct? There's a event strategy and those other ones. Did we already adopt those? Okay, thank you.
Okay, next, can we go back to the screen with the list? I think it was it Sports Day? Yes, Sports Day funding. So this was, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Marshall, $14,000? And where would funding for this come out of?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if committee wish to follow through with this, there is, I would propose that for 2024, we could fund it from the Community Capital Contribution Reserve Fund. If it's council's, excuse me, intention to continue this on as a long-term funding source, at some point we would have to build that into the operating.
But as of this budget, it would not put any pressure on the operating budget.
Correct.
Okay. I know coming from the committee, they haven't had a chance to meet since we met last, but I believe one of the questions that was thrown back to us was, would they entertain some tickets tickets, free tickets in lieu of money, and I think they were amenable to that. Just they would need to get confirmation through the board, their own board. So I think they would be quite prepared to work with staff to come to a satisfactory arrangement. Councillor Leahy, you might have some more details to offer on that.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Acting Mayor Crone. I just wanted to confirm with the Finance Department that the new director of the Mount Albert Sports Day weekend and Spring Fair has already communicated with you a commitment to have in place a structure for reporting finances after the next sports day. Is that correct?
So through you, Mr. Chair. The typical way that we would deal with the finances for the community groups would be the way that we would be dealing with the Mount Albert Sports Group. So the reporting structure that we ask them to provide to us, we would continue to do that with them.
Thank you. So, well, it's my understanding from the presenter who made the deputation, who is new in her role, that she is committed to doing that. And I wanted to emphasize the importance of building community that the tradition of the Mount Albert Sports Day weekend and Spring Fair functions, including the Mount Albert marathon, the 5-kilometer marathon that they host as well, that this is a long-standing tradition, that is significant in terms of aligning with our strategic plan and building strong communities and a sense of belonging in the community of Mount Albert. And it's important that this tradition continues. In terms of the modest ask of $14,000, I believe that that's a significant investment in what we will have returned in terms of the benefits to the community.
Okay, and if I could add to that, I think we could expect a much more robust financial reporting than we've had in the past. So, Councillor Johns, did I catch that you wanted to speak for, and then Councillor Roy DiClemente? Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Councillor Carruthers, Johns, and then DiClemente. Beg your pardon.
Thank you. I know when the car show was on here, we had an amount that was in kind. I'm just wondering, because we are supporting the Mount Albert Sports Day with so much in kind, I'm wondering if we can be reporting on that too when we're doing our budget. Just to keep in mind how this is not a $14,000 ask, it's a $34,000 ask because we are supporting in kind. So I'm thinking just on a go-forward basis, any of these projects that have a lot of in kind, if we could be reporting on that as well. Thank you.
Councillor Johns, then Roy DiClemente.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'll yield to Councillor Roy DiClemente.
Thank you. I was just seeking clarification of that in-kind amount because for me, it's a question of, it's not a question of whether Sports Day and Spring Fair is an important event. It's absolutely an important event. We pass a resolution every year saying it is of municipal significance. The challenge is that I believe I've got 3 numbers here on my sheet, so I don't want to quote a number, but I believe it's, with this $14,000, it comes very similar to a very similar amount that we spend across the street at the Sharon Temple for an entire year's worth of operating support versus a community fair for 2 days. And so given that we have a budget that has a $75,000 event strategy study, I might be more inclined to put a bit of a pause on this one. When we were looking at this, I considered that, as with everything, we've asked everyone to tighten their belts, and maybe the committee needs to tighten their belts a little bit as well. That, they're looking at entertainers and events at $4,000 right off the bat because I think it was clowns were expensive or something like that. If they're looking for signage and promotional materials, that's one thing, and I might be able to help with that. But from a scale and scope perspective, I think it's a very big ask compared to some of the other asks that we're already supporting. So, and again, we don't have the same. I acknowledge and welcome the sustainability of the record keeping and the reporting back to us. We haven't had that in the past, but I want to wait and see a little bit. So I'm resisting this, and I'd like to hear a little bit more from staff. Thanks.
Councillor Johns and then Councillor Leahy.
Mr. Chair, good discussion all around on this item. It seems to me that we're not so much speaking about the fair itself, but we're speaking about leadership's kind of reporting back and the kind of accountability and transparency on those numbers. And I think that the comparison to the Sharon Temple is a good one. And the fact is that I think if we were pulling that out of our operating budget, I think that I would wholly agree on that. The fact that we would be looking at this as a one-time funding source coming out of funds that weren't funded by taxpayer money, so that we can determine in this 1 year if the Mount Albert Sports Day could rectify some of the bottlenecks and challenges in their reporting in the past, to see where they can maybe come out in the future and come out ahead. I just think that Mount Albert Sports Day and Spring Fair is just such an important part of who we are as a town and culturally. And the fact is that if we are really looking at it from a numbers perspective and relative, that line item that Mr. Marshall was talking about, taking the $14,000 from, I think it has $1.6 million sitting in it. And there's never a lot of movement sitting in it. And I think that, so from an investment perspective, not as a budget as a whole, but looking at it as $14,000 of 1.6 million, I can get my head around that, as that is an incentive to support local community heritage and building community and ensuring, thinking of it as a catalyst to set up for what could be sustainable in the future. And I think that the fact that it's one time, that I think I'm there to support it. I'm going to support it. I'm supporting it.
Councillor Leahy, if you wouldn't mind, I haven't weighed in on this quite yet, so if I could get my first crack at it. I appreciate the comments made by everyone up to date, and I'll admit I'm biased. I've always enjoyed Sports Day, proud of that. And I think, although I will disagree with my friends from Ward 2, I think it is a bit of a false equivalence to say that this is like supporting the Sharon Temple. I think a better comparison would be to Tapestry of Taste, which we give $20,000 in financial aid to, not including our services in kind. And so 14,000 is less than 20,000. It's been 100 years that this is, nearly 100 years that this has been in operation. Other than the services in kind, they have asked so very little from us. As a one-time donation gift, I don't have a problem supporting it. And I think we could, get from them, the Sports Day Board, that we would have some acknowledgement that the town of East Gwillimbury heavily supported them with endorsements on the advertising and whatnot. But I'm happy to support this. Councillor Leahy, I'm going to let Councillor Foster speak first because he hasn't spoken to this yet. So go ahead, Councillor Foster.
Thank you. Again, I'd like to take a little further to where I believe Councillor Johns was going. Not so much that I have a problem with one-time funding. I would like to see some parameters around what this funding is going to do to change the operation of the sports day. So I think there needs to be some rules and regulations put around this as to what we expect as a council. If not, I'm afraid we're going to sit here next year with the very same argument. Nothing will have changed. Again, I've said this before, and I don't mean to, take a cut into anybody. I just look at this stuff and I think the municipality can't fund everything. And somehow to me, this tells me this could be a slippery slope. Again, we're going to have more people coming to us for funding. We just keep giving out and giving out and giving out. we don't say no nearly enough, and I know that I'll probably get carved for that one, but again, we can't fund everything. So I don't want to sit here next year with this very same argument. So there's got to be something that tags along with this of what this changes and what'll make us happy.
You've been very patient, Councillor Leahy. Please go ahead.
Well, you stole a bit of my thunder, Acting Mayor Crone, because I was going to make the same comment that I don't believe we should be comparing Sharon Temple with the Mount Albert Sports Day weekend. They're two different beasts entirely. So, but I would like to point out that we do not have a lineup of groups out the door banging on our door, because it takes a phenomenal amount of organization on behalf of volunteers to bring together this event attended by tens of thousands of people. And so I don't think that we should be making decisions according to what might happen in the future with other groups that we don't even know if they exist and haven't put forward any proposals for asking for funding for other events in other wards. So I would like to support this in terms of the funding with the new management, and give them the opportunity to create that sense of belonging, which is part of the tradition of Mount Albert, and follow through with greater accountability in terms of financial statements in the future. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Roy D. Clemente.
I just, perhaps I could get the clarification on the value of the in-kind amount. Can staff provide that to me, please?
So through you, Mr. Chair, our estimate is just less than $22,000.
Okay, so we're looking at $22,000 plus $14,000, which is about what we would spend at the Sharon Temple. I am not suggesting that the Sports Day and Spring Fair is the Sharon Temple. It is simply the amount of money that we are spending and the value that we are seeing. It's not an equal thing. It is simply, what are you getting for the money that you're spending? And so that's where my comments were being made, was that's the amount of money that we're looking at. I think $22,000 towards an event is more than we spend on Tapestry of Taste, frankly, and that's our own event. So if we don't want to do Tapestry of Taste, we don't have to, and we can save that $22,000. But the point being, this is a lot of money that's being asked of us, and I'm happy to compromise. I'm happy to increase that $22,000 and further in-kind support, but I'm not interested in providing a one-time grant of $14,000, no strings attached, cash to this organization at this time. Thank you.
Just one second, Councillor Leahy. Councillor Foster, I think you made a very good point, and you talked about, let's put some belts and braces around this, my words, provisions, caveats. Did you have anything in mind that might find its way into a motion?
Nothing specific, although, when I hear tens of thousands of people are attending and it's a community building event, I understand all of that. We still are, even this is a relatively small ask. We're still asking a lot of taxpayers to support something they never go near. And that can be said for, most of the events that we have. But, something as simple as how many actual people attend this event? Tens of thousands of people doesn't mean to me that the same people go Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. That's a little bit of a count that's strange. And I mean, how much is this attended by the rest of the municipality? I know it's heavily attended in Mount Albert. It's a great time. I've been there many times. But I just, somehow something doesn't seem just 100% right to me here. I think we need to have, again, that list of rules, and where we come up with that, maybe staff, also, I have no idea.
Would that be something that you delegate to staff to try and work out some guardrails for us?
I suppose that could be possible. It's another in-kind service, I suppose. You know, like I said, everything we do is going to cost us money here, right? So we're doing this on the back of the taxpayer, you know? We're still looking at a 7% increase, which in my mind is a little heavy. But again, we understand all this stuff, right? So I'm not sure where I'm going with this. I'm going to need a little bit of help from everybody sitting around the table.
Councillor Leahy, I hope you have some help.
Yes, we're asking taxpayers to support all kinds of facilities, brand-new library costing millions and millions of dollars that likely many will never set foot in. So that's not a good argument, in my opinion, with regard to this community building event that not only benefits Mount Albert, but attracts residents from all over East Gwillimbury and surrounding regions. Thank you.
Sorry, my apologies, Councillor Carruthers, I missed you.
Thank you. I'm not quite as animated when I want to speak, I guess. I have a problem with one-time funding because once we approve it once, it's never one time. It's always, but we gave last year, right? And we've had it before, and this is going to be very difficult for us next year. If we give the money this year and we take it out of this separate pot of money, we're going to be right back here trying to take it out of the operational budget with a tax levy increase, which I'm hearing people don't want to go above 7.1, and that's exactly what we'll be looking at next year. I understand it's a great community event, and I've been there myself, and we really don't need to beat that horse. We all agree it's a great community event. The question is, how much do we want to support it? We have a lot of events, and we just moved them all out of mayor and council and a lot out of mayor and council into CPRC. Otherwise, we'd be sitting with a list of all the events that we support. As Councillor Roy Clemente has mentioned, there is a $75,000 event strategy underway that we're approving, and I think that will really help shape what we want to do, how we want to support events. I haven't been very supportive of the $20,000 we've spent on Tapestry of Taste. I don't think it's delivering what we intended. So I'm looking forward to that event strategy so we can tighten our belt on some of these events and make sure that we're focusing where residents want us, where the events are most popular and resonate with our residents. So my question is, do we have a timeline on that event strategy? Do we know when that would be coming before us?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if the project's approved by council, then we would begin the work in 2024 and endeavor to, there's community outreach, obviously, that would have to occur, follow up with our committees of council, our existing events, and our community partners, with that work being performed in 2024. We would endeavor to report back hopefully in late 2024 with the findings from the strategy.
Thank you. So that will help inform our 2025 budget, but there's no way that it's going to inform our summer events, is what I'm getting from what you're saying. So with respect to the one-time funding, I would rather than giving a blank check that we purchase a thing. So we can say, we bought you whatever's on their list that they need, and then it appears very much one time. If we give them basically operating money, then they're going to come back to us for more operating money. But if we make it clear that this is a one-time funding, we are purchasing your new sign or whatever it is that they need, I haven't looked at in detail at their wish list, it becomes very clear that it's one time. And I think that would help us. We just need to be very clear when we're giving this that it's the $22,000 in kind that we are approving. And I think I would like that as part of the motion when we approve this, that we are approving the up to $22,000 in kind. And then the other point that I just wanted to make is, a point I've made before, is that I do have difficulty with events that charge a fee. So residents are supporting Tapestry of Taste, but it's free to attend. So this to me is very different, where as a taxpayer, you pay for this event, and then when you show up, you have to pay again. So I do think we need to really look at the tickets, and maybe that's the one-time contribution we can make is to buy X number of free passes to give out to residents. So that to me would be very clear, and residents wouldn't be asked to pay twice.
Okay, so let's, one last, I want to get to a motion, so last comment to you, Councillor Lee.
The,
Go ahead, Councillor Johns.
Mr. Chair, I'm happy to yield because I'm working on trying to craft a motion based on multiple councillors' comments, and so I'm happy to yield, and then if it's supportive of in nature.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much, through you, Acting Mayor Crone. I wanted to say again that perhaps we need some clarification. Councillor Carruthers has talked about admission prices and tickets. The Sharon Temple charges residents of East Gwillimbury to enter the temple, even though we're providing hundreds of thousands of dollars of in-kind services, which, Mr. Marshall, would you confirm that over the past decade that we have provided hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of in-kind services? I believe it was over $360,000, and hundreds upon hundreds of hours of staff services that have been provided.
Go ahead,
Through you,
Mr. Marshall.
Mr. Chair. If I'm recalling the numbers correctly, I think the operating grant that we have provided over the last 10 years was about $350,000, and there was also some in-kind services that we have provided.
Okay, let's try and, let's get us to a motion here. So I know Councillor Johns, you've got something, Councillor Foster had suggested we build some parameters around this. Councillor Johns, do you have something ready, or?
We can take a crack at it, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
It's looking to move a motion to support Mount Albert Sports Day and Spring Fair for $14,000 through the community contribution funding, and that EG advertising appear on material, and that Sports Day and Spring Fair be part of the events review in 2024, and that specific items be identified within their budget to be reconciled against that amount, and that we also approve the in-kind services to support.
Did you want to throw in there that this is to be recognized as a one-time funding, subject to the study?
Yes.
Councillor Foster, did you have any other ideas? Something you want to throw in?
Thank you. Again, just to go a little further on what Councillor Carruthers was saying, if you're looking at a one-time funding, the event materials on that list are about $4,700. To me, that's a one-time funding. It certainly helps them put the event on, needing those materials for the event. I could certainly support that. I'm not sure of the 14,000. Again, just my 2 cents.
All right, Madam Clerk, you're busy typing away. Go ahead, Councillor Roy DeClemente.
Thank you. That's certainly in the spirit of what Councillor Carruthers was suggesting, was that we would buy them items that they could use, and that this would be a way of providing some sustainable support. While it's a one-time expense of capital, they would have those items to use for future events as well. And so I would certainly support the $4,700. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate that. Councillor Carruthers, you had a comment?
Thank you. I just want to make sure that the consistency is recognized. I have spoken about the Sharon Temple as well, saying that you pay admission. That said, I've never gone to the fair for free, but I've often gone to the temple for free. So it really is apples and oranges, but I am consistent in I really don't like when we're spending taxpayers' money and then they get dinged with an admission as well. So that is a consistent comment. I do think that the temple is an entirely different beast, and many times we have events there that are free to the public. So I just want to set that record straight, and I still think that speaking with the fair about admission tickets to be given out through our libraries. They give out national park passes or provincial park passes, as well as some other passes for other things. And I think knowing that we could work through the library to give out some passes, I think it's something we should be working with the fair.
I personally like the idea of us buying a portion of the money to be assigned to tickets and to go through the library, because it's also good for the library, because to get a ticket, we could say to get a ticket, you have to present a library card that shows proof of residency, and I would hope would encourage greater numbers of people taking out a library card. All right, Madam Clerk, how are we making out here?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I've gathered everything that I potentially have heard. I may have missed components of it, but there is a draft resolution on the screen before you. I'm happy to listen in and make any revisions as required.
Okay, committee, give it a quick read. Let us know where we need to beef it up.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, if I could, one of the comments that I made was speaking to the fact that that specific items be identified within their budget to be reconciled against the 14,000. It is, the intention is that staff work with the Sports Day and Spring Fair Committee to find those items. I know that Councillor Foster had just identified the materials at the 4,700. If we are looking to identify sitting here, well, like on the fly, there is also security at $10,000. I just think if we're in for 4,700, I don't understand not being in for the 14,000 to ensure their success while they are looking to get back on their feet, when we are looking to take this from non-taxpayer funded amounts that have been sitting there not being used, and there's 1.6 million sitting there, and we're talking about 14,000, and we're talking about something so culturally significant to our town in what is Mount Albert Sports Day, and you're talking about people who the people are coming. This is also homecoming for people from Mount Albert. People come from everywhere that have left Mount Albert, and they come back for that weekend. There's all kinds of economic benefit, and I know that we can't sit there and analyze this, but I just think I get that we are talking about all this in principle, but sometimes for me, in my opinion, the right decision is to fund this thing and support them. That's it.
Okay, we've captured some more items here. Is there anything we're missing?
Yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Councillor Crothers.
Working with the Mount Albert Sports Day Committee to have free tickets at the library as part of what we are sponsoring.
Go ahead, Councillor Wright, Clemente.
In the spirit of making sure that we're as clear that EG Advertising, I think that the town of East Gwillimbury be listed as a sponsor.
Yes. Yeah,
I think
agreed.
that's where it is rather than advertising.
Correct. Well said.
I don't think that I'm going to be supporting it. The $14,000 is too much, and the CCC for Arts and Culture Heritage is a fund that's intended for us to expend on municipal initiatives such as public art and other expenses there. And so I don't think that that is an appropriate funding source. I understand that others feel differently, and I respect that. It's just my position and how I'm going to be voting. Thank you.
Councillor Crothers.
Free tickets to be distributed by the library.
Okay, so we have the motion in front of us. Have we missed anything? Speak now or for, okay, so I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? So we have a tie vote, so it's failed. I heard earlier that if we had a different dollar amount, you would be more amenable to it, so I'm open to suggestions. Councillor Carruthers.
I would move the same resolution with a $10,000 in place of the 14.
Okay, Madam Clerk, could you capture that for us?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just bear with me for a moment. I'm just
Please
gonna-
take your time.
So in lieu of 14,000, 10,000?
Could I ask a question on that?
Go ahead.
Could you help me get to why 10,000 is okay and 14,000 is not, so I can help get me there so I don't vote no on this and miss out on something?
If I may, Mr. Chair, I'm hearing $4,700 for specific items that they want. I'm thinking about a number of tickets available for the public, and that's where I get to 10,000. I think 14,000 is an awful lot of money in addition to the 22 we're already spending, and I'm looking at, I'd be in favor of even less, 8,000, so we can round it to 30,000 total contribution. But I'm hearing the arguments from my colleagues and looking for a middle ground. I think that we're going to be in quite the predicament next year when this has to come out of the tax levy. So I appreciate that this one-time funding can come out of a community contribution fund. As Councillor Roy DeClemente says, we can debate whether this is what that fund is there for or not, but it is one-time funding, so I'm happy to support it out of that fund with a smaller price tag, $14,000. Just it rounds up to an awful lot once you add in the in-kind contribution. I would, like I said, I'd be happy with 8,000 in there, but I'm trying to be generous.
Councillor Leahy.
Thank you very much, through you, Acting Mayor Crone. I'm wondering if my fellow councillors recall the presentation that Shannon Delaney made, and she mentioned in her presentation about the increase in the upfront costs in order to just get the event off the ground. And so I also want my fellow committee members to understand that they're effectively, by diminishing the amount that they are going to contribute, they are effectively handicapping the future success. If you recall also from the presentation, they had indicated that they had already cut back this year, and that is why they are seeking these funds in order to continue to make it a community event that is welcomed and creates a sense of belonging. So the consequences of voting against this motion, I just want everyone to be clear, is that it's effectively handicapping the future success of this event. Mount Albert only receives crumbs, if ever they receive crumbs, in terms of what is made towards the community, and that we are putting in a facility in Ward 2 of over $102 million, and that it seems very Grinchy to be voting against this.
Okay,
Yes.
I know we're getting passionate about this now. I think we've got 10,000 has been suggested. It's on the floor. Let's deal with that. I don't want to lose this opportunity to get some funding. So,
So just so everybody can understand and think about how they're going to vote, upon reflection, I am going to make sure that we are funding Mount Albert Sports Day based on what I am hearing. So I will be voting yes for this. I just wanted to be clear prior to the vote.
all right, Councillor Roy DeClemente.
I'd like to separate out the in-kind services up to $22,000, because I would like to support that.
Okay, I don't think that changes the spirit of the motion. Go ahead, Councillor Carruthers.
I'm very open to an amendment on that 10,000 if it would bring this to a unanimous vote. So I'm looking at the councillors who are against this, and I'm looking for middle ground here, and that's why I proposed the 10,000. So if there is a number that brings us all in line, I'm more than open to that.
I'm not hearing any. All right, so we're going to work on the first one. So moved by Councillor Carruthers to support the 22,000 of in-kind for the 2024 Mount Albert Sports Day and Spring Fair. I'd like to call a vote on that. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, one opposed. Motion is carried. Second resolution, we need a mover. Sorry, yeah, Councillor Carruthers moved that as well. Okay. All those in favor? Okay. Any opposed? Okay. Motion is carried. Thank you very much. I think we spent our collective time probably that we spent on that added up to $14,000. So let's carry on, shall we? What's next on the list, Mr. Marshall?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the staffing requests are next.
And could you break that down for us?
Sure. I'm not sure if the clerk could put the
Through you, Mr. Chair, perhaps if we have worked on a resolution that contains all of the staffing requests, would you like me to bring that on, or the presentation material?
the presentation material would be good. So we could work through it through the groups of growth-related and
Gotcha.
enhancements.
Would you like to go line by line, Mr. Marshall?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would recommend we not go line by line. But if anyone had any questions or comments, the one comment I would like to make is on this chart, there is the water and wastewater operators, it's 2 positions, and I might propose that that gets deferred to the budget deliberation session that we're going to have on the 5th of December.
Everyone in agreement with that suggestion? Okay. Any other questions or comments about this? Any strong feelings one way or the other? Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I would move approval in principle with the exception of the water and wastewater operators.
Okay, Madam Clerk, can you capture that for us? Okay, we'll give you all your time.
Mr. Chair, just bear with us for a moment. We're just putting that into a table format, just so that it's clear. I'll bring that up as soon as I can.
Okay, Madam Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm just confirming with Finance if the table that I have right now is accurately capturing all the components.
Yeah.
And this one as well, right? Yeah.
So have we got us to where we think we should be? Can I have a mover for this, first of all? Oh, sorry, correct. Councillor Roy DeClemente. Anyone like to speak in favor of this? Anyone like to speak opposed to it? Then we're ready to vote. All in favor? Motion is carried. Well done. All right. Next on the hit list, Mr. Marshall.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if we could go through the service level enhancement proposals for new staffing.
Okay. Committee have any comments on this? Would anyone like to make a motion? Councillor Carruthers is willing to move. Go ahead, Councillor Roy DeClemente.
Thank you. In a year where we are considering adding 13% of our bodies to our FTE growth, in a year that we're building and staffing our largest capital project in our history of our municipality, I feel that service level enhancements should be as minimal as possible in this particular year. I understand and recognize that there are strategic incentives here, that there are values being delivered here. I spoke earlier about the council and committee support position, that I felt that that was one that was eligible for us to reconsider. The EDI position was moved to capital as a pilot project, and I understand that and can support it. I had spoken during our previous committee meeting saying that we're already adding a human resources associate to the HR component, and I just moved a motion to adopt that position. So from my perspective, I can support the EDI going to a pilot project. The other three are rather significant hits on our tax base, and I understand that those are needed positions in the organization as we continue to deliver services for our residents. But the council and committee position, supports position, I think is extraneous, and given that we've also increased our council expenditures through our own budget, through communications, I feel that that is one that I would not support at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody wish to speak to that? Mr. Marshall, the council and committee support person that Councillor Roy DeClemente referenced, it's a pilot. Now, is that coming out of the tax supported part of the budget, or have we got that allocated somewhere else?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that has been included in the tax-supported budget at this time.
Any other comments? All right, do you want to, we have a, can you bring the motion up to the floor?
Through you, Mr. Chair,
To the
just bear
screen,
with
rather.
me for a moment. This motion was moved by Councillor Carruthers.
Okay, has everyone had a chance to read it? Last comments? All right, I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Mr. Marshall,
Through
what do you have
Mr.
for us next?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the last part is the Health and Active Living Plaza staffing requests.
I'll move that, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Roy DiClemente. Councillor Roy DiClemente has moved to adopt. Any questions, comments? Councillor Leahy?
Thank you very much. Through you, Acting Mayor Crone. I have a couple of comments to make and some important distinctions to make. We've been discussing overall with the budget wants and needs. I think it's critical when we come to the new staffing requests that we keep in mind that we cannot have everything that we like necessarily in life. That's called having your cake and eating it too. We are proposing here that there are 8 new hires for the library. And I have concerns about this and wish to seek a compromise in terms of the staffing levels, rather than 4 full-time and 4 part-time new library staff, that we consider having that amount in order to address what has been referred to by Councillor Carruthers as the significant requirements of opening the Health and Active Living Plaza.
Any comments, feedback? Councillor Roy DiClemente?
2 points. One is, we have been budgeting for these positions since 2016. That's my point. And my question through you, Mr. Chair, is to the clerk. I believe the library positions were already approved in principle when EGPL came to us during Budget Committee. Am I correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So at this point, I am simply, the motion that I have put on the floor is approving the Parks, Rec and Culture and customer service positions, which we've also been budgeting since 2016 for. Thank you.
So if we, Madam Clerk, if we've already approved it, did we not, or just
Through
in
you-
principle?
Through you, Mr. Chair, in principle, the library new staffing were approved on November 15th.
So
as
we're
part
just
of the
formalizing
entirety
it today.
No. I believe what you're formalizing is the balance of the sheet, which is CPRC corporate
Okay.
services
Okay.
in relation to health and active living.
Okay,
Plaza.
thank you. Anyone else wish to speak before, just, I want to give everyone their chance first. Councillor Leahy. Over to you, Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you. When I first saw this chart, I was a little bit confused why we would be hiring in the fourth quarter of 2024 when we weren't opening to 2025. I understand the need for some like supervisor type positions, but some of the more operational day-to-day type jobs, I was a bit confused. And it was explained to me, and I want to just pass that on in case there's people who are watching who don't understand why we're approving these. If we wait until next year's budget to hire the people that are supposed to start in Q1 of 2025, it wouldn't be approved until the end of December. There would not be enough time to hire them to start in Q1. So that's why that is in here now for Q4. It doesn't mean that those salaries will be spent in Q4. It just gives them the opportunity to start the hiring process because they can't start hiring until it's approved by council. So these amounts should be much smaller for next year. There's not another way to do it. We need to approve these now for Q4 next year so that they can be hired to be ready on Q1 of 2025. So I just wanted to clarify that for anyone who's listening. Excuse me.
That's really good information because we may not actually incur these costs until 2025. But over to you, Councillor Leahy.
Thank you very much. I have a question for, through you, Acting Mayor Crone, to Warren Marshall regarding the overall budgeting for the Health and Active Living Plaza. I would like to make a suggestion in the future because going through the whole binder, I found that I was trying to find information about the costs for the Health and Active Living Plaza in multiple different places. And perhaps even before we finally vote on approving the budget in December, it might be helpful if on one page we have all of the information about how much has been spent already on the Health and Active Living Plaza, where those funds came from, and how much of a shortfall there is in the future in completing all of the financing for the Health and Active Living Plaza. So am I correct in stating that we still have a shortfall that needs to be addressed in paying for the Health and Active Living Plaza? Is that correct, my understanding? And if so, where are the funds going to come from to cover that shortfall?
Mr. Marshall.
So through you, Mr. Chair. So right now, there are no operating costs that have been incurred with respect to the Health and Active Living Plaza. Since 2016, we've been preparing to provide funding so when the facility is opened and starts operating, that we have the funds available. So right now, we have estimated that the total operating cost, once it's fully functional, is $1.7 million. And we've currently carved out $1.2 million of funding towards that. So there is a bit of a gap. That's why there is a 1% proposal for an increase in our dedicated tax levy to start closing that gap. So we don't have a shortfall in terms of we're incurring more costs than we have revenue. We have a gap that we want to close to make sure that we have enough funding available in 2025 when the facility is open.
Thank you very much. And one quick follow-up question. So this year in 2024 budget, there is a 1% tax levy increase for the taxpayers for the operational costs. That's correct. And then how many years in the future will that 1% tax levy increase continue?
Mr. Marshall.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we're proposing that there would be one more 1% tax levy increase to make sure that we get to the $1.7 million target.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, comments? Madam Clerk, are you in a position to put a resolution up on the screen for us? Okay, take your time. And we did have a mover, correct? Yes, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, this motion's been moved by Councillor Roy DeClemente for the Health and Active Living Plaza new staffing. Bear in mind that the components in relation to the library were previously approved on in principle on November 15th. So these are the balance of the positions that were on the screen prior.
Can everyone read that all right on their screens? Okay. Any further questions? Okay. Go ahead, Councillor
Through you,
Leahy.
Acting Mayor Crone, I just wanted to make one comment to remind everyone that at the last meeting, when those 8 positions were approved in principle, that the conversation was shut down by Councillor Roy DeClementi announcing that there was a call to vote question, and that shut down any further discussion when I had questions that I wished to pursue at that time. So I just wanted that to be acknowledged, that the conversation was shut down at that time.
Okay, I don't know if that, okay, go ahead, Councillor Roy DeClementi, you have a comment?
Well, given that my name was referenced, procedurally, the way that council is to operate is to speak. We have a motion on the table. We speak for and against, and when positions are clear, then it is entirely appropriate for us to call the question when we know that there's really nothing more to be said and positions are clear, and positions were clear at the time, and so I called the vote. There was no need for any further discussion from my perspective. We've had that procedure invoked here in this room on other occasions as well, and it is not at all a restriction on questions or inquiries. Our abilities to operate as councillors and elected officials are not just constrained to this room. Our staff are available to us 5 days a week and sometimes on evenings and weekends if we have questions that need to be addressed, and not every question has to be addressed in this chambers.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I appreciate that. I want to make sure, we try and depersonalize, our comments and that we stick to the facts at hand here and the issues that we're debating. So let's move forward. And we have this motion before us, moved by Councillor Roy DeClementi. I'd like to call the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, back to you, Mr. Marshall. I think we're on to the multi-year funding plans.
Through you, that is correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I think these are relatively straightforward, but happy to entertain any comments or questions. Can I have a mover for this? Moved by Councillor Johns. The multi-year funding for Health and Active Living Plaza and
Mr. Chair,
go ahead, Madam Clerk.
through you, Mr. Chair, just bear with me for a moment. I'm just gonna ask our deputy to put it up, or
Okay.
would you like me to put the resolution? The resolution, okay, one moment, please. There it is.
Councillor Roy DeClementi, and then Councillor Leahy, you had a question? Yep.
This brings the entire procedure to a close, correct? Or no?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I think what we're looking for is just that last resolution right now, which has the dedicated tax increases. Then we need to do the cost of living increase, and then we can do those two at the top.
Thank you, because it seemed to me that this would be the final resolution, and it would lay out, given my past experience with budget, it would lay out the increase to the tax base and the final numbers that we had landed on. Thank you.
You'll be able to provide us with a summation when we're completed with this? Yep, thank you.
Madam Clerk, I'm fine with moving the 1% on help and 1% on asset management.
Councillor Leahy, you had a question.
So for clarification, for the purposes of those residents and others who are watching online, as well as in attendance here in the council chambers, we are still having a vote in December, the final vote on the budget, correct? Just for clarification purposes, thank you.
Mr. Marshall?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So this is a budget committee that will be forwarding their recommendations to council for their approval.
Okay. So we have this resolution from, moved by Councillor Johns. Any further comments? Okay, I call the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Go ahead, Councillor Leahy.
I would like some guidance, if it's appropriate at this time, Acting Mayor Crone. I'd like to discuss what the purpose was of the budget survey that went out to all the residents of East Gwillimbury, and its part in the process of prioritizing, as well as whether or not we found that it was useful for time and staff, for the time of staff to put into that budget survey and encourage members and residents of East Gwillimbury to provide feedback to the town with the understanding that it was going to be taken into consideration in the budget in terms of the priorities, and when in fact it has not been, the budget process has not reflected the priorities that were expressed in the budget survey. So my question to perhaps our CAO or our communications department is, what purpose did the budget survey serve, and what tangible outcomes were there from it? And if we found it useful, which in my opinion we did not, then are we going to use it again in the future to solicit feedback from residents?
Mr. Velchich?
Mr. Chairman, through you, so these sorts of processes are always done with an element of an opportunity for public input, no different than many of our other processes. And I'm not sure that council unilaterally takes the feedback and makes decisions explicitly based on the feedback. I think what council members do, this is not up to me to say because it's you, so you determine what you do with that information. But it's simply part of the process to provide any interested residents, stakeholders, et cetera, to provide perspectives and additional information in addition to what you hear from your constituents directly, what you hear from staff in terms of our recommendations and advice, what you hear in terms of reports and presentations. There's a whole myriad of inputs that you consider, and then ultimately you make decisions based on that collective input and information and perspective that you have to make the decisions that you believe are in the best interests of the community. So that I would not recommend eliminating the opportunity for public input. I think that would probably not be what I would recommend. However, we also can't force people to participate, no different than in the election process. Sometimes there's a concern that we didn't get more people out, but we afford everyone the opportunity to participate. So I think this is sort of along those lines. So I think it's an important part of the process, but it is part of the process to help inform you along with all the other inputs that you consider when you're deliberating about the budget. That would be the way I would describe it.
Councillor Crothers, you had a comment?
Yes. As part of my master's degree, I took a number of research methods courses, and we talked about the difference between anecdotal data versus pure data. And given the sample size and the number of residents, this would be anecdotal. And so this is the type of stuff that you can use to inform your decisions, but at the same time, understand where it's coming from. So I found this very informative. I went through it and I highlighted all the things that were regional. So one of my takeaways from this is that our residents don't really understand what is regional and what is town. So I think that's a good takeaway, that we need to be really publicizing with our residents what we are doing here in budget, what decisions we're making. It's not transit, it's not schools. And I think there's a place for us on that. I also took away from this the number of comments that talked about increasing council communication. And I think that helped inform when we're looking at the council budget, that we're seeing our residents who want more communication from council. So I think that it's something that can inform us, but it's not, when we're talking about evidence-based decision-making, this level of data is not, should not be informing our decisions to that extent, because it's just, the sample size is just not large enough. Thank you.
Councillor Leahy.
Thank you very much. Through you, Acting Mayor Crone. So while acknowledging that one of the feedback points was that communication needs to be improved and that this is anecdotal data, it was overlooked that the majority of comments were referencing the needs of the fire department, and that has not been acknowledged publicly. I would like it to be acknowledged publicly. And if it is just going to be anecdotal data, what can we say to residents in terms of the residents who took the time, the 109 residents who took the time? They're like the residents who come out and vote. They're the people who actually spent the time and made the effort to provide feedback to the town. So what is the town going to do to address those concerns that were expressed in the budget survey? Will there be any follow-up from the appropriate staff departments, whether it's regarding improving communication? Some had very specific questions, and so I'd like to know how we are providing a service to those residents who cared enough to participate in, if they will have any follow-up to address their concerns.
Mr. Marshall, you had a response?
Through you, Mr. Chair, maybe I'll start off, and if the CAO would like to add on as well. So in the survey, there was an opportunity for individuals who left comments to provide their contact information if they wanted staff to come back and contact them. There were a number of residents who wanted staff to do that, and we contacted each and every one of them and addressed their comments.
So you can confirm then, Mr. Marshall, that every resident who provided feedback and also provided their contact information, that the appropriate staff member followed up regarding those concerns?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, I can.
Thank you. I think it's not just staff, it's on us as well, on this side of the table, to engage with our residents. You know, we recently had a town hall, a coffee with council in our ward, and I think I didn't hear a ton of feedback. We had some, but not a ton. But I think it's important that we have to always be out there in the public, engaging with our voters. 70% of the people we represent didn't even show up to vote, so we still represent them regardless. And an old favorite saying I used to use with my staff in my previous career was, and we were a very data-driven company, the plural of anecdote is not data. And so we need to be mindful of getting as much information and engaging where we can. So I think we have one last resolution we have to get forward here. Mr. Marshall?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, it's the cost of living.
Cost of living.
So.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm just going to put that on the screen for council's consideration.
Okay. Do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Johns. Do we have any comments or questions regarding this? Okay. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion is carried. So we've been here for couple of hours. I'm going to suggest we take a 10-minute break. Any objections to a quick recess? Seeing none? All right, let's be back here at 11 a.m. sharp. Thank you. Okay, welcome back. Mr. Marshall, we're nearing the end of our journey here. Where are we at?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think there's just an overall resolution that has to be endorsed by committee, and I think that would wrap everything up.
What do we have for that resolution, Madam Clerk?
Through Mr. Chair, just bear with me for a moment. I'm going to put that on the screen.
Okay, so we have the resolution before us. And the bottom line is after we've made our choices, we are at an overall 7.1% tax levy. Can I have a mover for this, first of all, before we discuss it? Who would like to move this?
Question.
Go ahead, Councillor Carruthers.
We have already approved all these things in principle, have we not? So I'm not sure why this is before us, because these have all been approved in principle already. We should never put anything on the floor that if it fails, it goes against what's already on record. So I worry about putting this on the floor now and having it fail when we've already approved these things. There's already a council resolution to support all these things in principle.
All right, so fair point. Let's discuss this. We've had our 2+ days of discussion, deliberation. I know some members of council have further concerns. I want to hear from them. Let's talk about this. Ultimately, my desire would be that we could get to a unanimous position, but maybe that's just me being naive. Who would like to talk to this? Councillor Leahy.
Thank you. Through you, Acting Mayor Crone, I was the sole vote against approving this in principle, and that was for the reason that 7.1% is too high of an increase, and I believe that we can do better if we have to make tougher choices. And to quote Councillor Foster, who said, "We don't say no often enough," I believe that there are still ways that we can reduce that number and get it down to below 7%. And just a reminder that although we have a tax relief program, which our CAO referred to this morning as we began, which is great for those on fixed incomes who are feeling the effects of inflation severely, such as seniors in our community, that portion increase that we are proposing of now 7.1% is only part of the property taxes. Our residents still have to deal with the property taxes component from York Region and from the school board as well. So overall, for the average resident, it's not just an increase of $144. There are other increases that they will be facing. So we need to get that number below 7.1%.
Okay, we've heard a member against. Can I hear a member for? Councillor Johns.
Well, I'm just, sorry, what motion are we speaking to?
We're not speaking any motion. We're just talking about the tax rate right now.
Because we're talking arbitrarily? Like, sorry. I just don't know what I'm speaking to, because we've already agreed on everything in principle, and everything has been voted and passed along the way. And that's how we arrived at a number that we aren't speaking about. So if I wasn't speaking about a number, I wouldn't be speaking about what is on average $12 per month for households in East Gwillimbury for roads, emergency services, snow, sidewalk clearing, garbage pickup, the lowest relative taxes in York Region, quoting our CAO, if we were to deliver a 29.58%, that's based on the $600 to get us to the next lowest, we would have to deliver a 29.58% tax increase to get us to the next lowest, based on that 600 number from our CAO. That's how much of a gap we are in servicing our residents. And if you wanted to get it to a 6.9, if we're not, like, even though we're not talking about a number yet, that's $11.66 per month versus the $12 per month. So I think that if we want to cut something, like if there was a vote where there was not to vote in favor of a cost of living increase, and that lost, or sorry, that went through, but if it had lost, that would drop our tax rate, but that passed, and so that's how we arrived here. And so I'm not sure what we're debating now, because we've already approved everything, and we are already the lowest municipality in York Region. We will continue to be the lowest region in municipality, and we have such a huge gap in what our staff are carrying and the services that we're delivering. And I need to step back and not be emotional about this, because I feel like this is like a political vote when this is not based on the actual business of running the town. And we got elected to sit in these seats to move the business of the town forward. And so I'll remove myself from saying anything further.
Councillor Foster and Councillor Wright Clemente.
Thank you. A bit of a comment, and I'm going to try to not speak for or against. I've said from the beginning of this process, I thought the percentage in excess of 7 was pretty high. We're at a point now where we're looking at 7.1, and we've talked about knocking it below the 7 mark. I will say that I agree, everything's been voted in principle. We're sitting where we are because we voted for it. If those few points get knocked off, we're talking about $10, $15 over the year to our average taxpayer. So at the beginning of this process, going through the budget binder, there was very little in the budget binder that I didn't agree with, that I didn't see the point of it being in there. So I guess I'm at the point now where I have to trust staff more than I have in the past. If this stuff is still in the budget, then I'm assuming that it's required. We hire staff for their opinion, and if we're going to cut everything up that they throw at us, I don't think we're doing our job either. So we have had some pencil sharpening, if you will. So I still don't like the number, but I understand exactly why we're there. We're a growing municipality. We've got to pay at some point. I'll leave it at that.
Councillor Roy Clemente.
I understand some of the frustration my colleagues are feeling. The reality comes back to we voted on individual things along the way. And some of us supported some things and we didn't support others. For example, I didn't vote in favor of the 2.5 COLA. If we knock that down by 0.5%, we may have found quite a bit of money there. That in itself is a dramatic impact on our budget. So I spoke out, and I've been consistent since the budget was introduced, that I felt that it was too much. And in a year where we are trying to address some gapping as far as staffing levels, and we are increasing and enhancing our service levels on the recreation front, I felt that there were other areas of the organization that needed to pause while we did that work. So I didn't support some of the service levels, the service level staffing increases, and I didn't support the COLA. What that comes out as is, do I support the overall increase? I can't, because there are things in this budget that I fundamentally disagree with. And I can compromise on some things, and I can respect that my colleagues as a body have voted in support of things. So that's where I'm at, is I can't support the overall increase because I didn't support individual components at the most fundamental level, is adding staff for service level enhancements, for example. So that's where I'm at, and I understand the frustration at the table, and I've been part of this budget process. This is I think it's my 14th one. I didn't support last year's budget, which was the first time in my entire career as an elected official. I would like to support this budget. My time as a councillor has always been to approach the budget process with at or below the rate of inflation. The rate of inflation is dramatic. It's at 5%. But we also have to remember that the increase that we passed last year at 5.55% is now compounded with this 7, give or take. And that's where I'm struggling, quite frankly. That's where I'm struggling. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other comments? I know from my perspective, Councillor Roy DiClemente was saying the same things that I was thinking, that yes, we've approved everything along, but we didn't have unanimity on everything. And sure, I can say that word today, but I can't say revocation yesterday. So, we're at the point here where we are a council that I don't think we're united yet on a number. From what I'm hearing, I think it's 50-50 in where we stand. So at 7, we said at 7.1% is where we're at now. That's $144 a year extra that we're adding on to the municipal portion of everyone's tax bill on average, $12 a month. If we drop it down to 6.7%, that's $135. So we're talking a difference of $9 or $11 a month. Give or take. My math might not be right, but
70 cents difference.
Anyway, we're talking a couple of Starbucks. So I dearly would love to see us all united on this. I might be kidding myself. Councillor Roy DiClemente, you had a comment.
I just, I wanted to understand where that 6.7% came from.
I was just throwing a number out.
Okay. And for me, I know it feels like we're splitting hairs, but while there are some members in our community who can afford a couple of Starbucks, we're seeing exponential growth at our food pantry. And so people can't even buy lunch for their kids. So it is material. It may feel immaterial, but it is material for some of our community. And I know we have the programs in place to address that. I totally get that. I just want to make sure that we're being as sensitive as we can when we're talking about this. Thank you.
No, fair comment, and it was not my intent to be insensitive. Councillor Carruthers.
I think when we think about our residents struggling to pay their bills and with increased cost of living, and that we have to also consider that our job here is to provide the things that our community needs, such as the library, where people who don't have money to buy books can take them out for free, such as the Healthy Active Living Plaza, where we will have a pool, so people don't have to pay for a pool in their own backyard. God forbid if we each had to pay for our own fire our own roads or sidewalks or snowplows. So we are providing services that residents rely on, and it becomes even more important when times are tough. People need these free events that we put on. They need some of the services that we are providing and some of the things that are in this budget. When they are struggling and they pick up the phone and they call customer service, there better be someone there to pick up the phone. At the same time, I just find it very interesting to hear that we're not supporting 2.5% COLA increase for our staff, and at the same time talking about how high the cost of living is. So either we're supporting it or we're not, but I don't want us to try and have it both ways. To quote from our last meeting, it's if you support the things within this budget, then you support the increase. If the increase is unpalatable to you, then you need to say no along the way. And we've all said no to certain things. But at the end of the day, how the democracy of this council works is that it's collectively what we have agreed on. And collectively, we have agreed on the things in this budget that work out to 7.1%. And that's what we've agreed on as a collective. Nobody got everything they wanted. And that's where we're at. So I would suggest that the motion should read, whereas, for those clauses, that these things were approved in principle. So whereas the budget was approved, capital was approved in principle, the operating budget was approved in principle, and therefore be it resolved that the increase will be X amount. And if people just don't like the sound of 7.1% and want to drop it down to 6.9, we can do that by moving one of the part-time positions into reserves. But then we're back here next year when we want to continue that. So either we pay for it now or we pay for it next year. And how we got here is we kept it at zero during COVID when people had lost their jobs. And we said then that we will have to pay for this later. And we've had our staff running short-staffed for years because we kept passing zero budgets. And now it's time to pay up, right? And if we don't give staff the resources they need and the increases that they need to keep up with the cost of living, then we lose good staff. And that is irresponsible. If you don't like the sound of 7.1%, how do you like the sound of don't work for East Gwillimbury because they don't pay people within cost of living?
Councillor Johns.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as a comment, there was Councillor Carruthers made a comment. The reason why we are here is because of what happened in COVID. Respectfully, I'd like to challenge the fact that this is not a COVID and forward challenge. This has been a generational budget decision making that has happened prior to arriving at this council. Again, I'll reference the CAO's number of the $600 gap. Now, I was of the understanding that the gap was actually $450. But if we look at that, it is either a tax increase gap from 22.19% or a 29.58% to catch us up with what the next closest municipality is. That is how. And you can say, well, we shouldn't compare ourselves to other municipalities. I don't know how else we compare, because we are in the same job market, we are in the same service delivery business, and so we need to compare. And so if we agree that it's okay to compare, then that is how much of a gap we are, 22.19 to anywhere to 29%. That is frontline emergency services. That is our customer service folks sitting at the front desk. That is people on the roads. Like, we were debating hiring a roads person. Like, that is, we are at a tipping point in our municipality where if we don't start to take steps forward, we are going to start regressing and taking large steps back in what we're doing. And maybe that's okay. Maybe we don't want a swimming pool. But the council before me voted for it. So now I am here. So if we are here, then we need to pay for it. The council before me voted for a library, but now we have to pay for it. I went to bat on not not replacing a playground because we didn't have the money for it. So, like, I think that we need to think about what we're doing here when we're running the business of a town. We are behind. We need to start making some decisions in order to set us up for the future. We are here to make business decisions for tomorrow, not for today. And the generation of political budgeting prior to this has brought us to this point. This term of council hasn't brought us here. It was 20 years before this council that brought us to this point. I am supporting the 7.1, not because it is 7.1. I'm supporting the 144, not because it is 144. I am supporting it because it is a business decision that we need to make investments in our asset management. We need to support the decisions that we made in our parks and recreation, whether I agree with it or not. I'm supporting it because we made some capital decisions based within our emergency services, within our parks and recs. That is why I'm supporting it, because we need to. I don't want to give an increase. I don't want to give an increase. But this is a business decision.
Any other comments, reactions, feedback? Okay. Let's bring the motion up, Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there has been a slight change to ensure that the preambles are providing the prior context as to what was previously approved in principle, with the action being the tax levy increase.
Can I have a mover for this, please? Moved by Councillor Johns. Last chance for anyone to comment. Okay. I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion is carried. And this will come back to our council of December 5th.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we've proposed that it comes back to the 19th council session, but if committee would like it earlier, it can be directed.
We might as well. I personally think we should bring it back on the 5th if that's the next meeting following this. Unless anyone thinks otherwise. Okay. Anything else for us, Mr. Marshall, or are you fed up with us by now?
No, I think you're going to be fed up with me because we'll be bringing the water and wastewater budget on the 5th.
Oh, this was just an appetizer.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. I think we have a motion. We need a motion for adjournment. Can I have a mover for that? I should have many takers for that. Councillor Carruthers, all in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. I know this has been a journey. I appreciate it, and thank you, staff, for all your hard work. I know that this planning for this started many, many months ago, and I hope we got to a place where everyone, while maybe not everyone's happy, we can at least understand it and appreciate it. So thank you very much, and we will see you on December 5th. And thanks again for all your hard work, and good day.